are not available and Kevin Durant is still on the board, I think they'd explore it. I've reported in the past there has been mutual interest between Kevin Durant and the Houston Rockets. Kevin played for Ime Udoka.
Kevin Durant, the Slim Reaper himself, is once again staring down a new chapter in his storied NBA career. And this time, it feels like the writing is already on the wall. After a brief but tumultuous tenure in Phoenix, the Suns are all but set to move on from the two-time NBA champion, and the only real question that remains is where he'll go next. As time and Durant's age works against him, the answers he's likely to receive may not be the ones he wants to hear. But that hasn't stopped the speculation from reaching a fever pitch across the league. Whispers turned into headlines when it emerged that Phoenix had seriously entertained the idea of trading Durant back in February. According to league sources, they even pursued deals that Durant himself was firmly against. At 36 years old, Durant still commands immense value, but his future hangs in limbo, not because of his play. He averaged 26.6 points, 6 rebounds, and 4.2 assists this past season on surgical efficiency, but because of where he is in his career. This is no longer the 28-year-old Durant who can sign a 4-year max and be the face of a franchise for the next half-decade. This is the veteran, perhaps the mercenary, chasing one final ring. The Minnesota Timberwolves were reportedly very close to acquiring him at the last trade deadline, and according to Brian Windhorst, it wasn't just a casual inquiry. It was serious. So serious, in fact, that Minnesota has now emerged as the favorite to land Durant this summer. DraftKings has them listed at plus 250 odds, ahead of Houston at plus 300. The Wolves' interest is rooted in a simple but compelling idea. Pairing Kevin Durant with Anthony Edwards could immediately launch them into the league's elite. And considering the pain of falling short against the upstart Oklahoma City Thunder in the West Finals, you can see why they'd be desperate to make a move of this magnitude. Durant, meanwhile, holds all the cards. He has a no-trade clause. He has leverage. And he has his eyes set on one thing: competing for a title. Multiple reports suggest that Minnesota is a destination Durant would approve of, especially given his relationship with Edwards that began during the Olympics. The fit is obvious. What's less clear is how the Wolves could pull it off without blowing up the very core that made them successful this year. Jaden McDaniels is likely untouchable. He played all 82 games and took a major leap in the postseason, averaging 14.7 points on stellar efficiency. Anthony Edwards? Forget it. He's the future, the cornerstone, the one guy no GM even brings up in conversation. But that still leaves Rudy Gobert and Julius Randle, both of whom could be key pieces in a potential deal. Randle's value has surged after a strong playoff showing, while Gobert remains a defensive presence with a massive contract that complicates everything. Phoenix, on the other hand, is looking for more than just contracts to match salary. They want a roster that can retool quickly and avoid another season of mediocrity. Bringing in someone like Randle, who could start immediately at the 4, and possibly a wing like Mikal Bridges in a multi-team deal, might be exactly what they need. Bridges, remember, was a fan favorite in Phoenix and part of their core during their finals run just a few years ago. Bringing him back, alongside someone like Towns, could inject life back into the franchise that hasn't been the same since shipping out its youth for a shot at short-term glory. And then there's the New York Knicks, a team that hasn't sniffed the NBA Finals since 1999, despite a mini renaissance in recent years. Under head coach Tom Thibodeau and GM Leon Rose, they've become respectable again, making 3 straight trips to the Eastern Conference semifinals and reaching the conference finals this year. But respectability isn't the goal anymore. It's a title. And in that regard, they're still missing a key ingredient: a closer-to pair with Jalen Brunson. Pascal Siakam's MVP win in the East Finals was a symbolic moment. Not because it discredited Tyrese Halliburton, who was phenomenal, but because it reminded everyone that no team wins without 2 elite closers. The Warriors had Steph and KD. The Nuggets have Jokic and Murray. Even Kobe needed Shaq or Pau. And the Knicks, they just have Brunson. Karl Anthony Towns was supposed to be that second star, but things went south quickly. According to team insiders, there was growing discomfort around Towns' lack of defensive urgency and communication. His impact on offense wasn't enough to outweigh the liability on the other end of the court, and that was made crystal clear during the playoffs. When Draymond Green called him out and not a single Knicks player rushed to his defense, it was telling. In fact, they shook Green's hand the next time they faced him. That's not just silence, that's a verdict. Trading Towns and Mikal Bridges for Durant might be the exact kind of bold swing the Knicks need. Bridges has value, especially defensively, but in a team already stacked with perimeter stoppers like OG Anunoby and Josh Hart, his skill set becomes redundant. And his criticism of Thibodeau's heavy minutes policy didn't exactly endear him to the coaching staff. Durant, by contrast, brings a level of offensive firepower that transforms the entire ceiling of the team. Of course, this isn't just about basketball. This is about optics, legacy, and redemption. Durant's stint with the Brooklyn Nets never quite worked out. Injuries, chemistry issues, and missed opportunities defined his tenure there. But New York still looms large in his narrative. And playing for the big brother Knicks after suiting up for the little brother Nets feels like an overdue correction. The Garden is still the most iconic arena in the sport. Durant in that jersey alongside Brunson, Anunoby, and Robinson? That's a legitimate title contender. Mitchell Robinson, while offensively limited, brings defensive credibility that Towns never could. Durant's offense more than makes up for what Robinson lacks. The potential starting five, Brunson, Hart, Anunoby, Durant, Robinson, is the best balanced roster the Knicks have had in decades. And with Durant's window likely just 2 years long, it perfectly aligns with the Knicks' own timeline before a major reset is expected anyway. And then there's the Houston Rockets, a team that was once buried in rebuild mode but has now emerged as one of the NBA's most intriguing forces heading into the offseason. After a stunning 52-win campaign that caught even the most optimistic fans off guard, Houston is now sitting on a goldmine of assets, youth, and momentum. The question is no longer if they will make a move. It's who they're going after. And in the middle of it all, two names tower above the rest: Kevin Durant and Giannis Antetokounmpo. Now let's focus on Durant. The Rockets quietly shown interest before, but this time it's different. This time they're a 50-win team with real playoff aspirations and a front office willing to push the chips in. Durant knows this too. He's always been about legacy, and a run with this young, hungry Rockets squad could reshape the final chapter of his career. Of course, everything hinges on timing. Mark Stein has suggested that Durant's availability might be tied to what happens with Giannis. And if Milwaukee decides to hold on to their MVP, then Durant becomes the main prize of the summer. Houston is lurking in the shadows, armed with picks, contracts, and rising talent. A deal would be costly, but not franchise-breaking. And the reward? Adding one of the greatest scorers in league history to a team that's already ahead of schedule. If Durant lands in H-Town, the Rockets instantly go from exciting to terrifying. For Phoenix, the idea of getting back two rotation-ready players in Towns and Bridges, along with perhaps a draft pick or two, is hardly a loss. After missing the playoffs entirely this year, they need bodies, depth, and chemistry, none of which they had this season with Durant, Beal, and Booker struggling to coexist. A return to a more balanced, hungry roster could be the first step back to relevance. Durant doesn't have time to wait anymore. The Suns don't have time to keep running in circles. And the Knicks? Well, they've been waiting for decades. If this move is available, if Durant is really willing to come to New York and put the past behind him, then it becomes a no-brainer for all sides. Because basketball, at its highest level, is still about moments. Durant, even at 36, can create those moments. The Knicks, even after all these years, are still starving for them. And if the NBA gods finally decide to play fair, maybe we'll get one more unforgettable chapter in Kevin Durant's legendary career, this time under the bright lights of Madison Square Garden.